So John Dickerson is with us now to talk a little bit more about that interview. John, thank you so much for joining us. I would think that when we're just looking at the sort of present list of competitors for Bernie Sanders, this is probably the diverse group of people, more diverse than he's ever run against ever for anything he's ever run for.
Yes,
right?
Sure.
And,
that any Democrat has ever run for ever.
Ever, right.
Yeah, so we can keep...
And when he talks about, democratic socialism, just even during the last election, some of the things that he said seemed particularly left, particularly socialist.
Right.
Now he doesn't sound that far from a lot of the candidates that we see here. Everyone's talking about some form of health care coverage for all. Everyone's talking about some sort of break on education, whether it's free education or, some sort of subsidized education. Did he talk to you about his strategy to compete with this different field of competitors?
Well, before answering that question, this idea of being a democratic socialist, the democratic socialists actually even have some dispute with him, because essentially what it has come to mean in certain circles is just a really energized kind of New Deal, which is a lot of social services for people who don't have them in American society.
Right.
But some democratic socialists believe, no, actually a market-based system is bad for humankind, and so we want to dismantle the market-based system. So anyway, that's not what he believes, although certainly that's what the president would accuse him of believing. I think his essential message is this. I believed these things for a very long time. People are now coming over to my way of thinking. If you want somebody who really believes them and has talked about them when they were unpopular and when it was hard to talk about them and nobody was listening and people laughed, you want somebody who believes it and has it in their bones. That's me. And a lot of what campaigns are about is showing that you just are committed to an idea. This is what the wall was about with President Trump when he was a candidate. The wall was a symbol. In other words, he was more maximalist than anybody else. And so voters could say, whatever happens, happens. But I know that he'll be the one doing exactly what the president's doing, which is going to the mat for this issue all the time.
Senator Sanders struggled in 2016 with African-American voters. It's something we were talking about with an advocate of his earlier. Hillary Clinton got something like 86% of the African-American vote. He got 14%. Even though his message, the one that he spoke about to you and the one that he has always spoken about, is one that is that sort of resonates with everybody, whether you are black, white, whether you're LGBTQ, or middle class or worse. And yet he's going to be facing this list of candidates: a gay candidate, an African-American woman. And how does he plan to reach out to those voters that he wasn't able to get in 2016? Well,
I think he's going to keep making the same pitch, but it is a pitch that has a little bit more of a direct connection to the African-American community. And I think he will frankly hope to not have, we got two things will be different. One, Bill Clinton was called the first black president because of his relationship with the African-American community. So the Clintons had a special relationship with African-American activists and that community. In this case, also, he's running against candidates who might split the black vote. And so he might be able to make a case hoping that both, A, he's successful in his own terms, but also that the vote will be split up a little bit.
Republicans will say that what has been happening with the Democratic Party over time is the party's being pushed further to the left. That the stars now, after the last midterm election, are all these really left-leaning stars. But I wonder if that's actually the case when it comes to the people who are voting, and whether or not a more centrist candidate like maybe Biden or Amy Klobuchar, who seems to be sort of pivoting towards a more centrist point of view, if that person stands a greater chance of winning when you have sort of a field of other people who are kind of saying sort of similar things.
Well, this is why elections are so wonderful, is we don't know. And one of the things that will be adjudicated right now is where and how big this part of the party is. It has happened in the Democratic Party in 1972 with McGovern and Howard Dean in 2004. Howard Dean was the darling of the liberal groups. He created this new fundraising grassroots network that Jerry Brown had not been able to do in 1992. And so people thought, oh my gosh, the Democratic Party is going way to the left. But then zoom comes in John Kerry, who's about as kind of standard middle-of-the-road Democratic candidate. So we'll have to see this time whether there will be a lot of debate as they all try to compete with each other on something like Medicare for All, which will give it the feeling of being quite liberal. But you never know when the voters get together and they start to think, well, OK, let's get somebody who kind of is interested in expanding health care coverage for everyone, but who has, foreign policy chops or something that stands in for more moderation. But we're going to have to just see as the candidates kind of find their way, and also as the party. But this is the essential question, is where does the party come down? clearly it's moving to the left, but parties can move back to the middle when it comes to voting time.
Right.
Really fascinating interview, John. Thank you very much for coming
Sure
by.
thing. Good to be with you all
Appreciate it.
again.
Yeah.
So you can watch more of John Dickerson's interview with Senator Bernie Sanders on our website. Just head to cbsnews.com/Bernie.